Hi everyone, I'm Naman. In first part of this video, we will see how we can create MCP clients to connect to the MCP servers in your Spring Boot application. In the second part of the video, we will see how we can expose an endpoint in your Spring Boot application to connect to Ollama models. We will also see how we can pass the tools that we have got from the MCP servers to this Ollama model. There is a lot to cover. Let's get started. If you look at the overall picture, first on the Spring application client side, we will create MCP clients to connect to the MCP servers. These servers will expose tools and those tools will be available via MCP clients. Once the tools are available through these MCP clients, we will be able to pass these tools to the LLM models. From the client interaction point of view, this application can have an endpoint, say a chat endpoint, which user will interact with. Based on the user input will be fed into the LLM model, in our case, which is Ollama. And if based on the user input, if the LLM doesn't have the knowledge on how to process that request, the tools which are available with the Ollama LLM model, it will redirect that request to that tool. And for that tool request, MCP client will connect with that specific tool which can fulfill that request and get the results from that. And then those results will be returned back to the user. So this will be an overall flow from the client application side to the server application side. Let's start with the code. We'll first look into the POM. To get started on the client side, you need to add a Maven dependency for the MCP client. Once you have added the Maven dependency, let's go into the application.yaml. To create MCP client, you need to define properties in your application.yaml. You need to provide name of your MCP client and few other settings like do you want sync async processing to be done. Also, you need to provide your servers. In this case, I only have one server. So this is the URL and SEC endpoint for the servers that I have created, but you can have multiple servers, and for each server, application will create one MCP client. Since I have added only one MCP server, so one MCP client will be created by default. I have two controllers that I have added. Let's start with the first one. In this is a test endpoint that I have added so that we can test whether the MCP client that got automatically created from the application properties, are we able to call the tools or not. So this is a generic test endpoint. If you look into this test endpoint, all the clients that are automatically created, we are looping through all the clients. In our case, there will only be one client. And for that first client, we are trying to get hold of all the tools, and then we are iterating with all the tools that we have got for that client. To call that specific tool on that client, we'll call this call tool method, and for that request, we'll pass in that tool name and a map of actual argument that tool takes and the actual value of that argument. And once we do that, we can iteratively call all the tools. This is just demonstration so that we can see that we are able to hold of all the tools from the MCP servers. Now let's run our server and client to see if we are able to get the results from the tool. So I'm running the server here. The server is up. I'm running the client here. So these both are running on different ports. My client is up. Let's go to the Postman. This is the endpoint that I have. Let me start hitting this endpoint. So as soon as I hit the endpoint, it iteratively called both the tools that I have on my server, and these are the output that I have got from each of the servers. So this shows that I am able to connect with my MCP server and I am able to get the response from them. Now look at the other part of the problem where user will interact with the endpoint that I have created. This endpoint will interact with the Ollama model that I have. So based on the user input, whatever user input has provided, we will pass this input to the Ollama chat model. Let's start with the POM. In the POM to configure Ollama model, we have added this dependency for the Ollama. Once we have added this dependency for Spring AI for the Ollama, let's also look into the Spring application. Here I have instructed that the chat model that I'm using is through the Ollama. And for the Ollama model that I'm using, these are all the configuration default option properties. There are various different properties, like if you want to pull the model during the startup time, how many times you want to retry. This is the base URL that where my Ollama model is hosted locally. And there are other options that you can provide, that this is the exact model, Mistral model, that I want to use from the Ollama. In your controller, you can actually build the Ollama model, Ollama chat model. This is the code to do that. One important thing to look out for is the tool call provider. So whatever number of clients that have got created, all the tools that are available from all those clients, you can get hold of them through this, and then you can pass all the tools that you have got from all the clients to your chat model. So the flow will be, as soon as a user will hit this endpoint with some message, this message will be passed to this model. And if model figures out that the user intent is to get the result from the available tool or any of the available tool, then it will pass on that request to that tool, and internally that tool will be called, and the response from the tool will be fed into the Ollama chat model, and that tool result will be passed down to the user. Let's now look at our Ollama, which is running locally. So you can start the Ollama server with Ollama serve. I'm sure you can download Ollama from the internet. Once you have downloaded the Ollama from the internet, you can just start the Ollama serve. It would start the Ollama server. Once you have figured out that Ollama is running, you can pull the model. You can see what models I have already pulled. To do that, list command would show you these are the models that are available to me locally. And to see if any of these model is running, there's no model which is running right now. To start to run a model through the Ollama, you need to pick that name of the model, Ollama run. And the model is running. You can exit out of this prompt. It won't stop the model. To verify the model is still running, you can just check the Ollama PS. So this shows the model that I have started is still running, and I will be using this model in my application code. Since I have started this, I'm just going to restart my client server. Now let me validate this endpoint that I have exposed. This endpoint takes in a message, and it says that call all the available tool forward this. For this message, model will be able to intelligently figure out that my intent of this message is to call all the available tool with this particular keyword. When I hit send, it is now internally calling all the tools available to it with the word mountain. So these are the results that I can see for the word mountain. It called this string encoder server, and this is the output from this particular tool. For the same mountain word, it ended up calling this funny string generator, and it gave me the exact output that I am expecting from this tool. Why did the mountain cross the road to get to the other side? So here we have discussed the overall flow, that user is able to interact with the API endpoint that we have exposed, which is internally calling the LLM model that we have hosted locally. And based on the user input, we are able to call the tools via the MCP client, which is connecting to the MCP server. So in general, in practice, this will be your overall flow from the Spring client application to a Spring server-side application. And user will be interacting with the Spring client application, which will have tools and the LLM. That's all from my side. Thank you so much.